Hi, it's Christine, and you're with Ask Your Angels. And this evening, we are going on a very special journey. For those of you who may like to visit the library, we are going to a very special library today. And this is the Library to Your Collective Consciousness. And with us tonight to speak about the Akashic Records is Chris Ann Mulreed. Chris Ann is in the United States and is with us via Skype, and I'm sorry we did have some technical difficulties, so we're here now. And welcome, Chris Ann.
Well, thank you, Christine. It's a lovely introduction. I'm looking forward to this.
Great. I think we all are. This is going to be fun. We're going to be very relaxed tonight, so this is just a little chat session. And I guess we should start off with asking Chris Ann, can you define what the Akashic Records are?
The Akashic Records
Internet connection
are a vibration of memory. It's every thought, word, and deed that a soul has ever had on its journey is recorded in the Akasha, which is the primary substance of which all things are made. So every thought, word, and deed is out there, it's recorded, and we can use it, we can tap into it, and we do tap into it frequently, and people aren't even aware that they get into their own Akashic records.
Okay, I'm just going to alert our tech guy that we're still getting a technical issue at the bottom. No? Okay. Chris Ann, I'm going to ask if you can talk a little bit louder for our viewers.
Okay.
But thank you, that was great. If we want to go to this library, where would we find it exactly?
The Akashic Records are everywhere. They're in another dimension. They're a dimension of consciousness, like dreaming is a dimension of consciousness, or sleeping is a dimension of consciousness. So the Akashic Records are all places. Historically, they were only available to seers, mystics, oracles, and people of higher consciousness. And it's only recently that people have become more aware of them. And you had Madame Blavatsky and her students Rudolf Steiner and Alice Bailey, and then Edgar Cayce, who was working in the Akashic Records. And there's different ways of getting into the records. Some people use meditation. I was trained to get in there with a prayer that sets an energy field. People do it when they're daydreaming. And people tap in, as a child, some children play with soldiers, and they play war, and others play cowboys and Indians, and others are King Arthur and the knights. So some of the things that you're doing in your childhood playtime is reflective of a past life that you might have had recently, of a past incarnation. So people are tapping into their Akashic Records all the time without realizing or without intent.
Wow, I believe that. You know, when I was little, every night I used to dream I was this big white bird, and I think maybe like a seagull, but I think it was bigger, but I would be flying. And that feeling of being airborne was so real to me that in the morning I would run around the schoolyard, pretending to fly. It just felt like I had done it.
Mm-hmm. Very real.
Do you know the term 0 point field?
A 0 point field is another term for the Akashic field, because it's the primary substance where all things start. So actually they're one and the same.
Okay. And Chris Ann, what is the history of the Akashic Records?
It's not a religion. It transcends religion, because you can find the Akashic Records in Judaism and Catholicism, in Egyptians. It's been called by many, many names. And there's even references to it in the Bible, but it's the Book of Life, or it could be the Twin Pillars, or the God's Book of Remembrance, or sometimes you'll see a passage in there say, well, it was recorded, or it's recorded in the book. And those are all talking about what we call the Akashic Records. I think Madame Blavatsky actually coined the phrase Akashic Records in the Theosophical Society. So I think she's the one that gave it that name. And Cayce was working in it for a long, long time. He did 14,000 readings. And when he did his readings, he did them in trance.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was being hypnotized for something, and in the hypnosis, the information started coming through. And then he would go into they called him the sleeping prophet, he would go into a trance, and people would ask him questions, and he could go back into their Akashic records and read and give them answers.
I'm a big fan of Edgar Cayce. I loved his books. I loved how he talked about, he used to help people heal, because what he would do is they'd have some sort of affliction or something going on in their life now that they just couldn't fix. Mm-hmm. And he would go into that trance. And I think he was just an ordinary school teacher, was he not?
I don't remember, but I know he didn't have any special training, and he fell onto it by happenstance.
Right. It was just extremely gifted, and he would go back into their past lives, and he would find out, what was holding them back, and he'd come back out of the trance and tell them, and they would heal. It's remarkable.
Oh, and some of his remedies are so off the wall, but they work.
Which kind of brings me to the question, if he can go back and he can help people that way, then why do we not have that gift automatically of knowing our past lives?
It would be too overwhelming. Even when you go into the Akashic records, people will call me for a reading, and they'll want to know, who was I in this lifetime, and who was I in that lifetime, and who was this person, who was that person. And the records are guarded by the Lord of the Records. And the Lord of the Records decide what the person or the reader can have as far as dealing with that problem that they have now. But they're only going to give you information that's pertinent to something that you're wrestling with right now. I mean, whether it's wanting to uncover a new talent or whether it's a life struggle that you have, they monitor the information and who gets the information and how much they get. And it depends on how ready the person is that's getting the reading or the consultation.
Okay,
but there may be more information there than they feel that you can deal with at one time. So they'll give you, it's almost like on a need-to-know basis, whatever you're ready for. And they're not going to give you any more than you ask for. If you go to a psychic for a reading, a psychic is just going to say, well, I'm getting this, that, and the other thing. And they've got a lot of information that they're pulling from different places. But when you go for an Akashic consultation, you're coming with questions. You're coming with concerns. So it's very much an interactive session where you're telling, what's happening, what's not happening, and then you're trying to get maybe a higher perspective. Because when you're in the Akasha, you can look at things from a higher perspective. You can ask a question, and someone might give you an intuitive answer. And you can do this for yourself. But then you open your records, and you ask the same question in the records, which I will be talking about later, because I'm going to try and do a sample opening your records class for people if your people are interested. But once you get into the records, you get a different perspective on something that might be a simple problem. And one that I remember is a lady really resented her husband hunting. And when he went out and he was coming home with deer, and she said, no, this isn't, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be killing this animal so that we can eat. But she's eating turkey, and she's eating beef, and she's eating all these other things. So when they went into the Akashic, the real issue was that when her husband went hunting, he left her alone. So she resented being left alone. She resented him having another interest that didn't include her. So it was more about that than killing the deer and killing the animals. So you get a deeper, wider perspective when you go into the Akashic that you might get an intuitive reading.
Now, you had mentioned that the Akashic records are guarded. Can you give us a little more insight as to who has that responsibility?
Well, there's the keeper of the records, the lords of the records, who guard the records. And then through the training that I've had, they work with masters, teachers, and loved ones. Now, the masters are non-physical beings, light beings, that have never been incarnate. And they will disseminate, what information they think you can have. And anything that's pertinent to the problem that you're dealing with. The teachers, and the masters would be with you from conception, from when your soul was first conceived. The masters stay with you always. And then there's a level, the next level down is teachers. And the teachers are lesson specific. So if you're working on a particular lesson, that teacher will come to you. And if that lesson takes 4 or 5 lifetimes, that teacher will be with you for 4 or 5 lifetimes. And it could be a Buddha, it could be a Mother Teresa, or it could be a non-incarnate light being. But teachers can be, incarnate. But they only stay with you while you're learning the lesson. And once you've learned the lesson, then they move on to someone else who needs to learn that lesson. And the loved ones that work with you are someone who would be from your family line, possibly that knew you even peripheral. They might have, it might have been a great aunt or great uncle that you saw, but you didn't really know well. But when these beings come into a reading, they don't identify themselves as to who they are, other than a loved one, because they don't want you attached or dependent on a being. They just want you to get the information for yourself and be more self-empowered, because working with the records is very empowering. And that's what they want. They want you standing on your own 2 feet. You don't go into the records to find out, am I going to get this job or am I not going to get this job? It's not that kind of reading. Yes and no questions don't work out very well in the Akashic records. And when questions, when am I going to meet the love of my life? That's more for a psychic. The yes and no questions you might douse with a pendulum. But these are more the who, what, when, and why questions. Why am I having this problem in this relationship, or why am I still in this job? Questions like that are more beneficial through the records.
Okay. So, so Edgar Cayce used it for past life regression. Do you know of other people that have used it?
There's one that's using it now, and you can buy his DVD, I think, or CD. His name is Bruce Goldberg, and he uses meditation to get into the Akashic. Now, some people use prayer, some use trance, but he happens to use meditation. And I believe that Amazon sells a CD for $17 or $18 that you can purchase and try and tap into your own records. I've been working with Linda Howe because she seems to have done an incredible amount of work and research in the records, and I was just drawn to her through the back door. Someone called me up and said, I'm taking this class. I think you want to take it with me. And I said, no, I'm really, really busy right now. And she said, oh, it's only 8 weeks, and it's online, and you just have to do a little bit of work once a week, and then it's all done. So I said, well, I'll take the class, but I don't know if I can do anything. And I'm really big on working with signs from the universe. So this is the third time someone had mentioned to me the Akashic records, and that it's time that I took a look at them. So I signed up and took the class, and I didn't have any time to work with them. And then August I had time, and I started doing the practices, doing the sessions, and I told the universe, I said, okay, if I'm supposed to be working with this, you need to give me a sign. Get out the 2x4 and hit me over the head and let me know what I'm supposed to do next. Well, the next day I got a call from a magazine that I work for, where I do editorial work, and she said, we're doing something in September, and we're looking for practitioners to offer free services. So if you have anything you can offer, we'll sponsor you in the magazine. We'll put an ad. So I said, okay, this is 24 hours after I put out this request to the universe, so I guess I'm supposed to do this. So I did, and I only got 5 or 6 people that called. But those 5 or 6 people have referred, a mountain of people. So it's been, I just followed the thread. And then I had a client call, and he said, you need to get on Skype. I said, why? He said, well, because I have people in Europe that might want a reading. So I'm like, okay. And then you called with Skype. I'm like, okay, I'm going to Skype. I get it. So I just sort of follow the threads and see where it goes.
Okay, so this is something then that if our viewers were interested in they might be able to do this, or everybody can do this, or do you have to have a certain
Everyone
calling?
has the ability to connect with their Akashic records. Not everyone will do it the same way, but it's available to all people. And I think it's just the consciousness at the time when these were first popular, wasn't there, where they thought that people could handle this information. So it went, it went to the elitist, and it went to the oracles. But now with the way the energy's been moving and the way that people are raising their consciousness through work that you do and other people do, more people are ready for it.
Okay.
So anyone can do it.
Well, that makes sense. Is it a form of energy healing?
Absolutely. Because the first thing that I do as an Akashic practitioner is I work with a prayer, and the prayer sets up a column, a pillar of light. So the most important thing that we're doing is bathing the person in the Akashic energy, and that in itself is healing. And then the energy comes through on the spoken word during the consultation, and what happens with that is also healing. Now, some people have had readings and had an incredible aha, a paradigm shift in the moment. And it is possible, I can share a story about that in a second, to just have, a 180-degree turn in a reading. Some people will think about it, and then in a week or two, or maybe a month, it's like, wow, maybe this is what they were talking about. And they notice a shift or a change. And then the third type of people don't know from anything, and they just keep going and as though nothing has happened. But that doesn't mean that something didn't shift. They just don't, tie it back to the Akashic. But I found that past life readings can be very healing in themselves. And for some people, the knowledge of the past life, just knowing what the past life was, takes the fear out of something. And for myself, when I had my second child, I went into absolute panic attacks when my husband was going away to our property in New Hampshire. Now, he had been doing this for years, but when she was born, I started getting panic attacks when he left me. And I had a reading, and he had been my husband in a past life. He had been a ship's captain in England, and he was bringing supplies to the colonies. And when I had my second child, he came across from England, and his ship went down. And he didn't come home, and he left me with 2 children. So when I had the second child in this life, that memory came up, and it caused panic attacks. And the knowing of that erased the panic attacks. It's like, oh, that's where it came from. Because I couldn't rationalize why all of a sudden this happened. And when I had the reading and she explained it, it was just gone.
And does it not make sense that that's why a lot of people have phobias in this life, like fear of heights?
Absolutely. It's something that's happened in a past life, and they're carrying the cellular memory. And sometimes for some people, knowing it is enough. Others can know it, and it's still not enough. So why it was enough for me, I don't know. But for me, it just took the fear, took the struggle right out of it. And we had another experience. My oldest son was the first mate with my husband on that ship when he went down. And we had a pool at my in-laws' house. And I think my son was about 18 months old. And the first time my husband dove in the water, my son went ballistic. We couldn't comfort him. And the thought process, I went and had the reading, and she said that he had seen his father drowned, because they had both come over on the boat, and his father had gone down first, and his father drowned, and he watched him drown. So when he saw him dive under the water when he was 18 months old, all that came back to him again.
My goodness. And I think that's why Edgar Cayce helped a lot of people, because that's exactly what he did.
Mm-hmm.
He would take them back, find out why they have these fears or things were going on. And I think going back is great. If you have an issue that you've tried everything and you can't solve it, then you should definitely talk to Chris Ann. I'm going to say again that you're here with Ask Your Angels Talk Show. And with me tonight is Chris Ann Mulreed, and she is talking to us about the Akashic Records. And this is the library of all of your past lives. So we're just so thrilled that you could be here tonight.
Well, thank you very much. It's enjoyable. We got off to a rocky start technology-wise, but
it always does. Are you able to give us an example, Chris Ann, of how you go about accessing the Akashic Records?
For myself, I use a prayer. And the prayer was given to Linda Howe, who is my mentor. And in saying that prayer, we're setting up an energy field. We're calling in, we're acknowledging the lords that we're working with, the masters, teachers, and loved ones. And we're setting up a column of light. Because the Akashic energy works through the heart. There's lots of healings out there, and a lot of them are intellectual. Some of them are just energy, body. But the Akashic works through the heart. So it's coming in about 18 inches above the head, about above the crown chakra, and it's coming in down and to the heart. And we're working from the heart of the Akashic record to our hearts. And then we're connecting from our heart to the client's heart. So there's a beam that goes between the two of us.
Okay, thank you.
And then we're acknowledging the person, and we acknowledge them with their common name, and we ask that we can see this person in the light of the Akashic records, and we can know this person in the light of the Akashic records. And we say the prayer in 1/3 out loud and 2/3 silent. And the 2/3 we say silent, we use the person's legal name as they would put on their tax forms. And a lot of people don't resonate with their legal name. They have memories of, maybe their parents saying something or saying their name out loud or whatever. So when it comes to the legal name, we say that silently to ourselves.
Okay. I wondered why you did that. I should mention that I actually have had a reading with Chris Ann, and it was fantastic. I have a couple of friends who've also had readings with Chris Ann. If you'd like to, chat in some comments regarding your readings, that would be great. And again, we're with Chris Ann Mulreed, and we're here to talk about the Akashic Records.
And I have a website, which is basically under construction, but there's some of it up, and that's pathfollowers.com. And you'll see some testimonials there and a little bit of information about the Akashic Records. And the contact page does work.
Here's a question. If I were to come to you and I wanted an Akashic record reading for one of my family members, do you need their permission, or could you do that for me? Like, say, for my son.
The only thing that I can do, I can read your records in relationship to them. We don't have the right to tap into someone else's records. And we don't do children under 18. There's some modalities or some Akashic groups that work on children 7 and up, but we were told 18 years old. So we can read you, we can read your relationship with your children, but we can't read, other people.
Okay.
But it's interesting because not only can you read people, but what I'm going to be delving into, January is a big month for me. You can also read buildings.
Buildings?
You can read, if you're going to buy a house, you can read a building if it's on the market or if it's a public building. Like the Capitol Dome is public, so you can read that. But if there's, a privately owned building, you can't read that. But once it's put on the market for sale, the moment it's listed with a realtor, you have the right to read it. So if you're buying a house and you want to know something about the house, you can tap into that. Or if you're trying to sell a house and it's not selling, then you can tap into the owner can tap into, or I can for the owner, with their permission, tap into the house. And I haven't done that piece of the work yet, but that's coming.
Well, when you do, let me know, because I think my parents would be interested in that.
Okay.
We did have an online question, I believe, or from one of our viewers. Do you have an idea of how many lives we've had? Like, is it different for everybody?
Oh, it's definitely different for everybody, and not all lives are on this planet. So some were elsewhere. But I've talked with people that have had hundreds of lives, thousands of lives. So there's no, I don't know what the max is on those.
Okay.
But the Akashic records go back to the beginning of everything.
When you did a reading for me, did you get a feel for how many I've had? I hope I'm almost there.
I didn't get a feeling of a number, but I got a feeling of great evolution.
Well, that's good.
Of great evolution.
Okay.
That you've been at this and you've been in a position of raising consciousness for many lifetimes. So this is just a natural segue to, what you've been doing for a long time.
Well, I hope a lot of other people that are watching will also try to raise consciousness, because I do believe we're coming into a shift and things are changing rapidly, and we all need to kind of get on board for that. From our other shows that we've had, you'll have an understanding we need to reach that higher frequency. So, and that's one of the reasons why we're all coming together. In going back into the Akashic records, can it ever be a negative experience?
I guess it depends on how the person views the reading. I remember in my studies that one woman had been an executioner in a past life. And she said, oh my goodness, she said, that's why I'm so driven to work in the prisons for prisoners' rights. So here she was balancing karma and working through karma. And she didn't take that as a negative. Where another woman found out, and this was a woman that didn't have a lot of funds and didn't have a lot of prosperity and really was having trouble rubbing two nickels together. And she had a reading about a lifetime that she had, that she was fabulously rich and had servants and people that took care of her, and she wanted for naught. And she ended up resenting even more where she was now. And it actually turned her, gave her like a tailspin. So it was her take on what she did. Did she take the information and go with it, or did she take the information and look at it as a piece of information? This is something that you did. We're in school. We're here learning lessons. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to be good, fabulous people all the time. Otherwise, there'd be no reason to keep coming back to get it right.
No, that makes sense. And I don't think you'd want to have it. I mean, I know viewers out there are going to disagree with me, but I don't think you'd want to have it easy all the time, because if everything came so easily, then you wouldn't learn. What would you learn?
Well, that's this is a personal thing with my mother-in-law, but she's not going to mind. She came to me one day, and she dated a man who, they just had a fabulous relationship, and it was very easygoing. They both liked to dance, and they were both very, very happy, but for whatever reason, they didn't get married. And she married my father-in-law, who's a tough Irish guy and not really supportive of her emotionally. And she has phobias. And if she had married the first gentleman, he would have catered to her. But my father-in-law didn't have the patience for her phobia. And what do you mean you can't travel here and you can't go there? And she fought her way out of it on her own. And she ended up doing phobia clinics to teach other people how to deal with them. And I truly believe if she had married the first guy, it just wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. She might have had a happy, carefree life, but there would have been no soul growth.
Yeah, see, and it goes back to everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
If someone was to come to you for a reading, how would they prepare for that? And what information do you need to do a reading?
I have a few little bullet points on the website, but the best thing to do is just think about areas where you're challenged, whether it's your work or your relationship, whether it's your creativity, whether it's your family, but look for areas where you're challenged and you just keep running into a dead end and you're not sure why. And possibly in the Akashic records we can get a higher perspective or a different perspective than you've had now, so that you can see a reason for it. I mean, people forget, or I just had a paradigm shift myself through this work on karma. I always thought of karma as cause and effect and punishment. You know, an eye for an eye. If you do this to someone, it's going to be done to you. And through the work, I've come to see karma as a teaching vehicle, as a way to allow us, if you have harmed someone, and then you're in a position where you are harmed, next time you're in a position where harming someone is a possibility, you carry that remembrance of what it felt like, and you make a better decision. So it's really about personal growth and not about punishment.
I believe that too. I just want to reintroduce you, Chris Ann, for those who have just joined us. You're with the Ask Your Angels talk show, and we are with Chris Ann Mulreed from the United States, who's joined us this evening to discuss the Akashic Records. And that is your library for your soul's growth. So all of your lives are kept in this library. How great would it be if we could just go to sleep tonight and just go to that library like you would chapters and go through all those books and see all your different lives? That would be so cool.
Well, I'm a firm believer in setting your intention before you go to sleep. If you have a question, ask it, and then, see what comes in the morning.
Yeah.
And I also work a lot with the full moon and the new moon, and I think we have a new moon coming up Friday, and writing the intentions on the new moon of what I want. So I want to know more about my Akashic records, or I want to know, we don't want to go with want, but I know more, I'm learning more about my records, I'm learning more about my history. Set your intention with the new moon of things that you want to bring into form.
And we talked about that. Where is the best place to put, you write it down or type it up, and where's the best place to put it, Chris Ann?
Any window that the moon is going to cross at night. In where I am, it comes up in the east, goes through the south, and sets over in the west. So windows on any three sides of the house catch the moonlight at some point. So what I do on the full moon, I put a blank piece of paper up, and I charge the paper with the full moon energy. And then I take it down, and then about 2 or 3 days before the new moon, I put it up with my intentions written on it. So they get the new moon energy. And then I just put the paper away until next month I get a new piece out. And it's surprising when you look back at the intentions 6, 8, 9 months later, how some of the things have started to come into form.
So you have actually seen results from this?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Well, I have had mine out there since the last new moon, so I'm still waiting.
Okay.
But I'm
maybe
hopeful.
reword it this time, maybe fine-tune the wording.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no reason that you can't, repeat an intention, but maybe fine-tune it or crisp it up a little bit.
Okay. I probably will go over that again, I'm sure, after Christmas. When things I need change. I used it more for spiritual growth, though, but I'm hopeful. The new year's going to bring new possibilities. How often, if someone did come for an Akashic record reading, Chris Ann, how often should they do this? Is there any kind of parameters at all?
I think it depends on what the person's doing with the material that they get in the records readings. Sometimes there's tools for you to work with or something for you to do. So if you're getting the reading and taking that home and following through, then work with that for a while. And then if you get another hiccup or you get to a place where, I'm not sure I can go any farther the way I am, and then maybe call for a short reading.
Okay.
I do the readings for either, it could be a half hour to an hour, but basically they're running a half hour to 45 minutes.
And you can do these
it's surprising
remotely?
how much information can come through in half an hour.
And you can do these remotely, right, Chris Ann? Like for people who aren't in your area, you can do this remotely?
Yes, I have a conference line. I mean, this has been a whirlwind week. Monday I did a website. Tuesday I did conferences and Skyping, so it's been a whirlwind week. But yes, I have a conference line now, so people can call into that. Or I'll see how Skype works. I may be able to work through Skype with phone sessions.
When you work that out, can you give Tech Guy a call and maybe help him through that?
Sure. Because I had some people in
Europe. It's a good thing you can't see what's happening over there.
We can.
Oh, okay. I also wanted to ask, what are the benefits then of having a reading?
For some people, it's validation that they're on the right path. And I'm finding a lot of people, I mean, they're doing the right thing, they're moving in the right direction, but they're having a good time, and they're almost afraid that they're not doing something right because they're so passionate about what they're doing. They're so in love with what they're doing, and they're thinking, well, this can't be my path. I must just be entertaining myself. But, you know, your path is supposed to be fun. You didn't pick out a path that was all rocky and bumpy and, you know, uphill the whole way. If you're really passionate about something, whether it's your gardening or your cooking or your kitchen, go with it and let the energy flow.
Mm-hmm.
And even, you know, when I have readings, if people aren't willing to give information, the healing flows on the word, the vibration of the word. So when you have the back and forth conversation, that's when the energy is flowing back and forth. But if people aren't willing to open up and talk about things or ask things, then the masters and teachers aren't going to give them solutions or answers.
So it's better than when you're having a reading to have some questions prepared.
Right, and there could be questions about relationships, about work, about, you know, about jobs, about artsy things, creativity, you know, where you're blocked, or why am I in this relationship, or whatever. But not questions like, you know, is this the right job for me? You know, then you want to help them weigh the pros and the cons, because the records will not tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They will help you, guide you through the process of deciding, but they will not tell you what to do.
Well, I was no help when I came for my first reading because it was all new to me, and I remember Chris Ann saying, "Do you have any questions?" And I'm like, "Nope." Nothing. I had nothing. But no, it was a great reading. It showed me that I'm on the right path for me, and I highly, highly recommend it. If you're struggling with anything, we'll post Chris Ann's website. I'll let you know now. It's www.pathfollowers.com. Is that right?
Right, and that's with an S, plural.
With an S, yeah. So if someone's having an Akashic record reading, Chris Ann, what should they expect? Like, will they feel something? Will they feel like they're hypnotized? Will they feel relaxed?
No, don't feel, they might feel comfortable, they might feel supported, they might feel like they can sit down and take a breath, you know, relaxed in a way, but they're not going to be hypnotized. And I get into a zone, but I'm not, you know, in an altered state. Or I guess I'm in an altered state, but I'm not in a trance or anything like that.
Do you remember, and again, I'm using my reading as an example, but do you recall what you were feeling yourself when you did the reading for me?
I think yours was one of the readings that was very emotional for me. And I think I have a feeling that sometimes when we get so close to the truth, that it's a very emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes for me it's a lot of emotion, and it's happened with maybe half a dozen of the readings that I've done.
It was very emotional for me, and I recall when you were reading for me that I thought I heard you choking on me at the same time. And that's why I asked. I'm like, I think she's crying too.
Yeah, it was.
It was just such a fabulous reading. I'm so glad.
That just, you know, when something like that happens to me, it's just such a confirmation that this is, you know, something that's needed at this time, and this is a valuable piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
Which I think you are.
Yeah, thank you. Does an Akashic reading help eliminate emotional blocks and restrictions?
It can. It can help with physical problems when people understand where they came from. It can help with emotional, but it depends on where the person is. Sometimes the people aren't willing to give up what they have.
Mm-hmm.
You need to look at the disease and find out, what does the disease bring you? Because some people are tied to having the disease. They work and they go to healers and they do this, and you can get them in a better place, but then they realize, well, maybe they're not getting the attention from their spouse or from their parent or from their children that they were getting when they had the disease. So sometimes people are unwilling to give it up.
Okay. Now, for myself, when I had the Akashic reading with you, it really resonated with me. So I'm very confident that it was the real deal. There's always going to be viewers who are going to say, okay, you're going into my past life. How do I know that what you're telling me is true? Like, how would they, what advice can you give them?
I don't think there's any way to prove it, but does it feel right to them? Do they resonate with it? Does it make sense to them? Can they relate it to anything that's ever happened? So I think it's more of how they're feeling about it. But I have had, people that I've talked to and I've read about people that have had them, and when you're giving them really good information about themselves, and sometimes they're in a place where they don't feel deserving, that they can't relate to that information. They're not used to people saying those kind of things about them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm seeing a soul, I'm seeing it at the soul level. And I'm seeing the beauty and the divinity and the spark in it. And some people aren't seeing that in themselves. So for them it's hard to, relate to the reading. But it doesn't mean that it's not registering with them at some point, in some place in their body or in their soul.
Even if they're not
So
aware
it's
of
good for them to hear. They just might not be accepting of it
Okay.
on a conscious level.
Can an Akashic reading actually pinpoint the origin of someone's soul? Like, have you ever? I know it's fairly new for you, but have you experienced, or your mentor experienced, going all the way back to the beginning of someone's lives?
I haven't, but I believe that Linda Howe has. And if anybody has any questions that they want to ask, they can email me. And I have a meeting with her once a month on the first Tuesday, I think it is, of the month. And she lets us send in questions. So if someone has a concern or a question, they can get it to me and I'll get it to Linda, and then I'll, share it with who's ever interested, or maybe I'll post it on the website if the people are okay with that.
I think we have a question.
Okay.
I've got a question online. It's from Old Man 1912. He's asking, how much is a reading? So how would you price something?
Okay. They're $45 for half an hour.
Wow, it's reasonable.
$75 for an hour. But for anybody that wants a reading from this group and they send me a request and they put AYA as a code, Ask Your Angels, it'll be $10 less.
Thank you, Chris Ann.
So all they have to do is put the AYA, and haven't worked out the PayPal piece yet, but I will.
Well, that's great. Is that great? Any more questions before we go back? Hello?
Nothing yet.
Okay, well, would you say that an Akashic record reading can improve someone's life, like the quality of their life?
Absolutely, because they get a stronger sense of who they are. They get more in touch with, the real essence of who they are. I mean, we're here, we come in with a veil, and we have a veil of forgetfulness. And the reason that we have the veil is because if we could remember all of our past lives or all the things that we've done, it would be overwhelming, and the brain would just short circuit. So people once in a while can peek underneath the veil and retrieve pieces of themselves. And in seeing that true essence of who they are, I think that's healing in itself.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question. You had said this does not work to determine whether or not I should take this job or leave this job. What about, though, for a career path? Is it like, say I've just come out of university, I have no idea what I want to be. Is there a way to go back into the Akashic records to find out something that you were extremely good at, let's say in a past life, to see if maybe...
We can ask about past talents that would serve you, but it's, rather than have it open-ended, it's probably, and I haven't had that question yet, and it's an excellent question, but I think it would be better if people, if they had a direction and then they wanted to know about a past life that they had that might support that.
Okay. Nope, that makes...
You know, what have I done in the past that might lend itself to supporting me if I take this route?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because they're not going to tell you which road to take or which person to date or which job to take. You know, that's more of a psychic.
Right. And do you believe that we carry certain character traits from one life to the next?
We absolutely do. We absolutely carry them for one life to the next, because any lesson that you're working on may not be wrapped up in one lifetime. So say there's a girl and she's working on abuse and you know, she's had an abuseful father or brother. If she hasn't worked that out in this lifetime, she will come back as a new person with a new name, and she might get those issues again. So she would bring forward some of those character traits that would support the lesson that she needs to learn.
So in other
But
words...
besides character traits, I managed a metaphysical bookstore for 10 or 11 years. So I ran into a lot of characters. And in the town that we're from, there was a gentleman who was a fireman. And he had gone down south on vacation, and he went to a Civil War site. And in that, he had like a spontaneous remembrance of being in a battle there. And he did some studying, he did some research, and I don't remember if he remembered a name or how he connected the two dots, because this was so long ago. But he ended up finding a picture of the person that he used to be. And if you put that picture next to his picture, they could be brothers. Now, not only did he look like the person that he used to be, his wife looked like the wife he used to have. And the firefighters in his fire department looked like men from his brigade. And he had scars he was born with that were in areas where this general or colonel were shot during the war. So not only did he bring through, you know, like a like of the Civil War and pieces like that, but he brought through physical things that he had had before, physical remembrances.
And do you believe we travel in the same circles?
Yes. I believe if you're married to someone, you've probably been with that person before. And I found through the readings, the thing that's been interesting, because like I said, I got referrals from 6 different core people. And it's almost like the people that are referring the people are, their threads are similar. You know, what they're working on is similar. How they're evolving is similar. So I'm seeing threads of soul groups, and it's very interesting.
And we're all here to help each other, obviously.
Mm-hmm. But you definitely, you know, you can be a father and son, or you can be a mother and daughter, or, you know, sometimes your husband might be acting like your son, or your son might be acting like your father. Mm-hmm. It's because they're calling back that remembrance of when that was so.
Okay. It's funny, you know, where I used to work, well, actually going back before then, I've always had a fear of water, of being near water or in the water, especially when I was out near the ocean, like the ocean at night. I had a very uneasy feeling. I never used to like being enclosed with water. So it took a few years before I would even take a shower, like be enclosed. I took baths, just to be clear. But I had this fear, and I used to, and then when, you know, the Titanic movie came out, it really resonated with me. I just felt like, I feel like I was on the ship. I just do. And I have a friend who also feels the same way. And then the last place where I worked, the guy who was across from me, I just kept saying to him all the time, like, I know you from somewhere. I just know you. And I kept coming to work going, maybe you remind me of this guy, or that it was all famous people. But it just started bothering me so much. I started researching the Titanic. And the shipbuilder, the one who actually built the ship, I found his photo, and he looks identical to this guy who sat across from me.
Oh my!
It was
incredible. There you have it. It's like the firemen in town where I am. So you get the similarities the threads that run through there.
It looks identical except the hair's a little different, but the face, I mean, it's him. I swear it's him. And the strange thing is that the one of the women who we worked with, she looks identical to the picture of the man's wife.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, but definitely I definitely think it could be him.
Well, sometimes in past lives, and this isn't about the physical resemblance, but sometimes if you're getting a reading and you may relate to a certain person, you might have lived in that time period. You might not have known that person, but that person might have been a prominent person in a time period that you lived.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that comes up and people think they were that person, but they just lived in the time period where they were. Or, you worked with someone that worked for them. So you had the connection.
That makes
but a lot of
sense.
people, aren't who they think they are, but it's more of an archetype. There's some sort of tie. I mean, there's a lot of people that think they were with Christ when he was on the cross, and I don't know how many people were were there at the time, but I don't know that all the people that think that they were with Christ when he died were. But they might relate to someone being put to death unjustly, and he represents that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're relating to that, not to actually having been with him at that time.
Oh, that makes total sense. I used to be haunted by a song. I don't know if have you heard of a song? I think it was called Lieberstrom. Have you ever heard of that?
No, what is that?
It's a classical piece. I heard it a long time ago. There was a little jewelry box store. It had one of those antique jewelry boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And when it played, I was overcome with this sadness, and I just felt like I know this song, and it took me right back in time. It was like I lived another life. I just knew it was from a past life. And I looked it up online, and I found it. And it's very haunting, and I just came to the conclusion I must have lived in that lifetime.
Well,
But
I think
there's a
that's
sadness
a lot
attached.
of the times that we're popping back into our own Akashic records.
Mm-hmm.
If you're driving down a street and you see a home with a covered porch, and you're like myself, and you're really drawn to it, I might have had a lifetime where I lived in a house with a covered porch. Or if you're big into playing drums, I mean, you might have been a drummer. Or even, if you love to paint, and if a certain artist really attracts you, you might have been in his time period. Not that you were him, but you lived in that time period. Or you did art at one time. So there's so many things that come up in our life, in our daily life, that relates back to the Akashic records, and it's when we're actually tapping into them and we don't realize it.
Can the Akashic records actually give you some insight into strengths you didn't know that you had?
Yes, just like talents that you didn't know that you had.
Okay. And can opening the Akashic records help with health-related issues?
Yes. Yes, because you might have a disease that came from, a carryover for something that happened before. There was one man that he lost his voice, and he wasn't able to speak anymore, and they couldn't figure out what happened. And they went back into the Akashic records, and he had a time when he was put to death for speaking his mind. So when he went to a rally and he was, shouting at the rally about what he wanted, the human rights and everything, he lost his voice because he was afraid he was going to be put to death for speaking his mind. So instead of being put to death, he lost his voice. So in the remembering of why he's not going to get put to death this time for speaking it, and it's a safe place to do it, we have the freedom of speech, and his voice came back.
It's incredible.
So some health issues, some are environmental. So you can go back into the Akashic records, and if you have an environmental illness, going into the Akashic records I don't think is going to make a difference. But if you have an emotional reason for a medical issue, then definitely it can make a difference.
So it's more psychological.
Mm-hmm.
And by opening the records, can you find out, if you're curious, how you died in a past life? Is it something that we should ask, or should we not know?
When you delve into the Akashic records, you're looking for information that will help you move through a block or an issue that you have now. It's not a parlor game. And, if there's no purpose in finding out why you died, unless why you died in that life has a bearing on what's happening to you now, then it would come up. But if it's not tied to what you're putting on the table to look for, and it's something they feel you can answer, they won't bring up the information. And it was very interesting because the first time that I went into the records, and I didn't even know that I was actually getting into them, but Linda did a meditation with us, and we got into a quiet place, and I sat quietly, and all of a sudden I was in a room with no walls and no roof, and just rows and rows and rows of books as far as I could see. And I was like, whoa. And I said, well, no, that can't be for real. And then I picked up Edgar Cayce's book, and he said, when he got into the records, he ended up in a room with rows and rows of books and no walls and no ceilings. And I'm like, darn. I said, the same place Cayce ended up, but he ended up with a little man who went and got a book off the shelf and gave him the book, and I didn't have that.
No? You
I
had to get it
my
yourself?
Own book.
That would be so exciting to be able to do that. Can you, completely forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yes. When is it the best time to have, is there a best time to have a reading, like when the planets are aligned, when Mercury's not acting up, like, does it matter?
No, I think it's just a matter of you being open to receive. So there's I used to work with Darius Dinshaw with color therapy, and he had the best time of day to do a healing session if somebody had a problem. And every day was a different hour or a different minute. But there's nothing like that in the Akashic Records. When you are ready and you find the reader, you're good to go.
Okay. For those of you who have joined us, I just want to say again that we're with Chris Ann Mulreed. We're talking about the Akashic Records, and that is the library of your soul's consciousness. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. Chris Ann has made a very generous offer to help. Was it 5 people?
5 or 6.
5 or 6? Did you want to talk about that, Chris Ann, again?
Yes, what I'd like, and this idea just came to me yesterday, so it hasn't come into full form, but I would like to try and work with 5 or 6 people and develop a class where the people can learn to get into their own records, to get their own information. And I'll either do it through Skype, telephone conferencing, or I have a conference line. Details to be worked out. But I would take 5 or 6 people, and we might meet, maybe 3 or 4 times, so I can try and come up with a class and they can get the experience. It's going to be a fact-finding, see how it evolves.
Well,
so if anyone's interested, they can just email me through the website, pathfollowers.com, and in the contact page, in the comments, say you'd like to try and do the online class. There's no charge for that. It's just something that I would like to try.
Well, thank you so much. That's so
You're
generous. I know a couple people already, I'm pretty sure, will take you up on that.
Okay.
What information can you share regarding legacy connections, karma, and death?
Legacy connections, I'm not familiar with that. Karma we had talked about earlier, and my feeling on karma has changed as I've progressed through the records, and I used to see karma as punishment. But for some of the people that joined later, I saw it as cause and effect. If you did this to someone, then in turn this happened to you. Like a payback sort of thing. But I'm seeing that it's more of a teaching so that you can learn fundamentally, if you put this energy out there, this is what it feels like. So next time you're in a situation where you can make a choice, do I want to put this energy out there or do I not? You think twice about it, and you might have more compassion in dealing with who's ever on the other end of the situation. Mm-hmm. So it helps you make better choices. So it's soul growth.
And in closing, I just wanted to ask one more question,
mm-hmm.
which completely just went out of my mind. So I guess it wasn't very important. Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't have another question. I did, but it's gone. So
Okay, I'm sorry I talked too long.
That's never happened before. Do any of our viewers have any questions for Chris-Anne before we sign off regarding Akashic Records? Maybe, give them a sec to see if they want to chat on a question. Chris-Anne, can you, again, tell them a little bit about the readings that you offer?
Okay, I'm doing Akashic record readings for a half hour, maybe 45 minutes. And it's an opportunity for you to look at something in your life that might be blocking you, a stumbling block, a hiccup, someplace where you're just not progressing and you're hitting a stone wall. We can take a look at that and see if we can get a different perspective on it. And if anybody thinks of a question tonight after we're offline and you just want to shoot it to me at the website, you can do that. And if it's something I'm not familiar with, I'll let you know, and I will bring it to my mentor on the first Tuesday of January and let her field it. And then I'll post the results on the website for people to see. I have a question and answer area. And I don't have, it's not full, but I put, some of the questions that I get asked a lot.
I have a question. It's the one that I'd forgotten.
Okay.
Because someone had asked me this today, and I'm not sure if this is something you would know offhand, but when we pass on and we go to the other side, the people that are in our circle, do we wait for them before we come back, or do we have a choice, or do you have any idea how that works?
That I don't know. I do know that from my own personal experience in my own family, that when my father died, the night before he died, my mother saw his mother standing behind him with her hands on his shoulders. And I have had other friends who have seen family members or been talking to family members, my mother included, was talking to her father and her brother, who were both gone before her, in the days before she died.
It's beautiful.
So whether they wait around or they just come back to greet you, I don't know. But it's, you've got a continuous cycle going all the time. Mm-hmm. There's people coming in and people going out. I mean, if you and your husband, one was to cross, he might not necessarily wait for you to come back.
He probably
He will join maybe one of your children or one of your other, a family member, so he'll still be close.
He could be crossing over a lot sooner than we think. He's over here going...
Does that have to do with technology?
Clearly he has a question for us.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question that Twin Flame asked a while ago.
Okay. Twin Flame. We love Twin Flame. Hi, Twin Flame.
Twin Flame, past lives and any Twin Flames in past lives.
That's not a question.
I know.
Boy.
Can you give us that question then, Twin Flame?
Can I give you that? What question?
I think he's...
Hold on.
Boy. Yep. We have technical difficulties at the beginning of the show, and we have a few hiccups.
I had to clear the
I think
chat.
you only get one twin flame per incarnation.
Here it is.
You can have a soulmate. You can have more than one soulmate.
Oh,
here's the question.
Here's the question.
The
Okay.
question is, what is the connection between twin flames and past lives?
Don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Twin...
It's not an Akashic question.
I can maybe try and help with that. Twin flames, everyone calls it soulmate. Soulmate, we have that perception that soulmate is someone that was made for us at the beginning of time. Soulmate is actually a person who comes back in your circle. So we are all soulmates that are in this circle together. And it's kind of like mate being a friend. So we're soul buddies. And twin flame is supposed to be actually regarded as the person that was made for you.
Yeah, either that or it's one soul split into two.
Exactly.
Two souls made from one source soul.
Wow, do you like that echoey effect? That was really cool. Yes, another question.
We have a question from Rachelicious, I guess.
I
have
that
a
name.
question. Why do we have dreams about our loved ones that have passed away?
Oh, I think they're trying to reach us. I think they're in the etheric. So sometimes they want to let you know that they're okay. Sometimes they want to say goodbye. They may appear to you in a dream the night that they die to let you know they're okay, or sometimes they have a message.
Mm-hmm.
Try and talk to them and ask them.
Where'd you hide the money? No.
It's always good to have an open dialogue.
I believe they come back and try to give messages for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions? He's looking at his computer very intently, Chris Ann. Anything else before we sign off? Nope.
Nothing yet.
Okay.
Okay, well, again, you're with Ask Your Angels and Chris Ann Mulreed from the States. Whereabouts in the States are you again?
I'm about 35 miles east of Manhattan.
What's the weather like there? Are you getting snow?
No. We had it in October. We were without power for a week in October with Albert, and we were without power for a week in August with Irene.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
But no, we're good now. It's just in the teens or something.
So no white Christmas there either.
No.
Okay, I think that all of our viewers should get their positive energy flowing. We should all focus on a white Christmas.
Sounds good.
That's my Christmas wish. Okay, well, I guess, we're good? I think we're going to sign off now. Chris Ann, don't hang up just yet. We're going to say goodbye.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. I'd like to also mention again, we're with Chris Ann, and Chris Ann Mulreed is talking about the Akashic Records. You can reach Chris Ann at www.pathfollower.com. Pathfollowers with an S.com. And
is there a link on your website?
There will be. I will write a blog. There will be a link. There's a link on Blog TV. So
okay.
we'll make sure everybody can reach you and take you up on that great offer. 5 or 6 people can study with Chris Ann. That's very exciting. So next week we have Jill Michelle coming on the show, and she's here to talk about angelic awakenings. And we're super excited about that. And thanks so much for joining us this evening. Oh, have a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, all of that just to you and your families. Thanks for joining us this evening.
And thank you so much. I really appreciated being here and meeting everyone and getting through the technical difficulties and just having a good time.
We did too. Thanks so much. And hopefully we won't have that next week. Okay, bye-bye.